This is Mr. Ward. I'm doing a key for Algebra Do Now 20.3. Will be a blog today. And so here we have our first question. At the beginning of your trip to see the world's largest ball of string, you had 720 miles to go. So the beginning of my trip, that means 0 time. I had 720 miles to go. After 12 hours of steady driving, you had arrived. That means I don't have any more distance to go. So I have 0 miles to go when 12 hours have passed. Could I organize this information into a couple of intercept points? Now remember that time is usually x and distance is usually y, because time is independent. It doesn't care whether you're driving or not. But distance requires time, so it's dependent. It is an output. How far you have to go is an output of how long you have been driving. So if there's 0 time, and at the beginning of your trip, that's 0. Okay, so 0 hours. Okay, at 0 hours, we had 720 miles to go. We could create a point at, of course, 0, 720. So that's a y-intercept. Okay, so b, which we usually use for y-intercept in linear equations, is 720. Okay, and then we could also take a look here. So at 12 hours, you have arrived. So you now have 0 miles to go. Okay. Cool. We have 0 miles to go at that point. And so we could also say that we have, after 12 hours, you have 0 miles. So A, which we usually use for x-intercepts, would be 12. So there you have the information that's asked for. You've got a couple of intercepts. X-intercept is 12, y-intercept is 720. So hopefully you found them. You found an x-intercept at 12, 0, and you found a y-intercept at 0, 720, and I explain why in here again. So which of these equation forms would be best suited to creating an equation for this trip to see the world's largest ball of string? So this is basically creating an equation as a model for the trip. So slope-intercept form, well, we have a y-intercept, but we would have to calculate the slope. So we could do that by calculating the slope. We do have a couple of points, and we could calculate the slope here. So we could do that. The intercept form is just x over the x-intercept plus y over the y-intercept equals 1. And this is probably the easiest one to use because we have A is 12 and B is 720. So this one would probably be the easiest. With a bit of work, you could also work out the standard form. And later on in this Do Now, I have a little text box that talks about how you can get any of these things. The easiest one is the intercept option, intercept form, in my opinion. That's different from the slope intercept form. It's just the intercept form because it doesn't have the slope. You'd have to calculate the slope from it. So we can say x over our x-intercept at 12. So I'm going to say x over A plus y over B equals 1. And I'm going to walk us through how we get those. So we found the x-intercept, which was 12. So we replace A with 12. And we found the y-intercept, which was 720. So we replace that with 720. And that will go through those intercepts. And you can use that line to model any time and distance that was along that trip, assuming you were steadily going along that trip. So, so if you came up with x over 12 plus y over 720 plus 1, that works well as the intercept form. Of course, other forms could work. So I've laid out here that since you may have noticed the distance is going to be reduced by 60 each hour, so you could have a slope of negative 60. That essentially means you're going 60 miles an hour towards the 0 point. So in the context of the points that we've been given, we would treat that as a negative 60 rate. Though I imagine you could probably have set it up differently so it's positive 60. But that does allow us to create a slope-intercept form equation of y equals negative 60x plus 720. You could probably also create a model which was y equals 60x minus 720, but that would be setting up your intercepts a little differently. As long as you keep track of things, you can do that. Okay, so that would graph this as well. This would graph it exactly as this intercept form does. Okay, this right here would have a y-intercept at 720 and an x-intercept at 12. Okay, so then you would graph this, and you could graph that too. So, but also since you have a couple of points and can get a slope, you could set up point slope form too. It'd be y minus 0 equals negative 60 times x minus 12. So if you use the 0.12, 0, or if you use 0, 720, you can do y minus 720 equals negative 60 times x minus 0, assuming you worked out the slope. Now, finally, standard form is probably the trickiest one, but not horribly bad. If you multiplied all parts of this by 720, essentially you're clearing the denominators. And you don't have to multiply it times 720 times 12 because 12 is already a factor of 720. So you multiplied each part of this by 720. The 1 becomes 720. The y over 720 times 720 just becomes 720 because the 720s cancel out. 720 times x over 12 cancels 12 out of the 720 and cancels the 12 out and leaves a 60 as the coefficient of x. So this becomes 60x plus y, that's a 1y, equals 720. And all of these would graph the same thing. And I promise to walk through a little bit more of this in my video. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to go to a Desmos. Okay, so here we go, Desmos. And if you already understand this stuff at this point, you could stop the video at this point. But I'm going to create our points. We got 12, 0, and 0, 720. I'll label them, and then I'll zoom out so you can actually see them. I think I'm going to do this. I can change my y-axis while leaving my x-axis reasonable. So I'm going to make my x-axis from negative 20 to 20. And my y-axis, well, that's weird. That's my y-axis. That's what I meant to do, my x-axis. So negative 20 to 20. There we go. That's better. And my y-axis, negative 100, we'll make it to 800, and that'll get us everything we need. Okay, I think I might have to still move it up a little bit. I'll have to zoom out just a hair. There we go. So that's a little more reasonable. See, I've stretched out my x-axis and squeezed my y-axis. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the first equation, x over 12 plus y over 720 equals 1. And that totally works. Now, I would, of course, restrict that to x values from 0 to 12. 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 12 because I'm just dealing with the times from when I started to when I ended my trip. I stopped at the world's largest ball of string here 12 hours later when I was there. Okay, so now I could also use the slope-intercept form. So you could work out a slope from these 2 points. We could say 0 minus 720 is that, and 60 minus 0, you should be able to see is 60. And then we can divide that by 60. I'm sorry, what am I saying? That's not 60, that's 12 minus 0. I'm making silly mistakes. Okay, so now I could divide that by 12, and I'll get negative 60. So that is my slope, negative 60. So once I have that slope, I can say y equals, this is slope-intercept, y equals negative 60 plus my y-intercept at 720. Well, I just made a silly Jimbo mistake. I left out the x. Okay, if I turn this one off, you'll see that it makes the same equation. I'll plop in the same restriction, and there we go. Now, I could also use point slope form. Okay, so I can use y minus 0 equals, I know my slope is going to be, oh my goodness, I'm way down there at the bottom. There we go. Now I can look at you and say hello. Now it's y minus 0 is sorry, let me refocus. Y minus 0 equals the slope of negative 60, which we could calculate earlier, times x minus 12. So that's a point slope form that works. In my restriction again. Or I could have used the other version. I could use the other point, 720, y minus 720 equals negative 60 times x minus 0. And I probably wouldn't use the point slope form for this because of the zeros, but it works. It will actually work mathematically. And then I could finally take this one here, and we can work it through some stuff. So if I multiply all parts times 720, this times 720, and this times 720, I end up with an equation that I can simplify. So 1 times, I'll turn that off for now. 1 times 720 is, of course, 720. 720 over 720 is 1. That's a 1 there. And 720 over 12 is 60. And I don't need to write the 1, but I'm leaving it there so you are reminded that that is the coefficient there. So this is standard form. AX plus BY equals C. All right, I hope that was helpful, and have a great class.